Well, I know there's a bunch of concerns about how are all of these teams in these conferences going to back out of all of these out of non-conference games that they have, but I say just scrap. Big Ten can go back to eight conference games, and then that add a Pac-12 team and an ACC team, and I think that's an easy solution and an easy fix. I think they should do that if they want to all join together. Like, you got to make it beneficial for everybody, and that's one way to do it. And for me, this is, I know everybody keeps saying it's a power play against the SEC. It feels like it's as much a power play against ESPN, in my opinion, so that ESPN doesn't get like the full rights or the the full negotiating rights to an early cancellation of the existing contract. And so they the Big Ten, ACC, the Pac-12 want to open it up to everybody. And it's interesting to me that the ACC is part of this, being a partner with ESPN, but they also know that they have the worst contract with ESPN, and so and then you feel terrible for the Big 12, who has talked to other conferences, and the other conferences are no longer picking up the phone when Bob Bowlesby calls. So you feel a little bit bad there, but I think the scheduling is the easiest fix. It's an interesting fix. It's a good fix. Like, I wouldn't mind an Ohio State schedule one year that that they travel to North Carolina, and the next year that same year they're hosting Washington and stuff like that. And I know they're not going to want it to load it up too much, but if you have a 12-team playoff, go ahead and load it up. If you win the conference, you're in.
Yeah, I think that this is kind of a survival mentality, I think, from these three conferences. The SEC has obviously struck a huge blow and now has control, so to speak, of the direction of college football in many ways. With the addition of Texas and Oklahoma, they're going to command just so much attention, and their TV contracts are going to be extremely bloated and these kind of things. One of the things that I hear here is that they want to go back to 8 conference games, and the Big Ten went to 9 conference games because that was the best thing for the Big Ten network, which they are a 49% partner in. It created more compelling content. If you want to consider Rutgers against Minnesota as compelling content, it's much more compelling content than Rutgers against Temple, but because it is, quote unquote, a Big Ten game, at least in name only, that 9th conference game. So that was why they did that. It created more value and more Big Ten conference games for the television partners to increase the value of those television deals, particularly the Big Ten network deal got more conference games out of it. So that's a trade-off. And I think that there's going to be trade-offs for each of these conferences to become part of an alliance. I think there are some things where there's going to be common ground. I think there's going to be certain things where there won't be common ground, and maybe they'll go their separate ways and agree to disagree. But still, at the end of the day, support one another on the biggest of issues. And I think the biggest of issues is the future of the playoff, access to the playoff, and then just the overall governance of college athletics, in the post-NCAA era, whatever that may look like, whether that's football branching away from the NCAA umbrella and becoming its own entity, or they disband the NCAA and you have some kind of new conglomeration of conferences and schools that run major college athletics. It's hard to say. I mean, this could be 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road before you get to that point, but there are a lot of things that have kept these schools and these conferences together. I consider this to be a good thing. I don't look at it as an us versus they thing. I look at it as a like mind thing. Is let's find out what's best for our schools, our student athletes, our fans, and if it's something that fits the common good of the sport and fits the common good of all the Power Five, then so be it. Let's go in that direction. So, I don't look at it as an anti-ESPN thing necessarily. I just look at it as, hey, there's so many issues coming down the pike right at us that let's get our friends together, people who we know we can count on as a voting bloc per se, and and have some type of solidarity and sort through the issues and get a common sense answer. So I don't think 8 conference games is really a better solution, in my opinion. I really don't. I think playing, for lack of a better term, playing Akron is kind of worthless. So maybe replace that with the extra game with ACC or Pac-12 or whatever. But, maybe 2 of those type games and 1 Akron game. I don't know. But at any rate, just I don't look at it as it's going to be threatening for anybody. I look at it that it's just circling the wagons and, okay, they made their move. And so now we're on the defensive. No question about it. And I say we, the other 3 conferences, are on the defensive. The best thing the Big 12 could probably do is add the Florida schools that aren't in a major conference and maybe Houston or whoever and try to make a go of that as the, quote, 5th major conference and, go at it like that. But the future of this sport, future college sports in general, it's hanging by a thread. I don't think anybody really has an idea where it's going.
I think that this alliance, until I see otherwise, just is going to be a lot of pretty words and prose and whatever, and it's not really going to amount to anything. I don't know, fool me once, fool me twice. I just, the Big Ten and Pac-10, were they the 12 at that point? I guess they may have been the 12, went into a scheduling alliance that never amounted to anything. I'm really skeptical that Washington State and Wake Forest have anything in common whatsoever. So this group of 41 teams out of 3 conferences are moving in 96 different directions, with league offices that who knows where their interests lie. So I don't know. I'm not really putting in too much faith in this at this point. I think that moving to 8 is important. Not to contradict Steve, but I think it's important just to get everybody on the same page. I think the Pac-12 needs to move to 8. I think that the Big Ten needs to move to 8, and that's kind of where we need to go with it. I still think that the Akron game is important for some regards, just to kind of prop up the non-autonomous 5 programs, let them still get some paydays, as they're going to start getting shut out of some opportunities if we see this alliance amount to something a little bit more than what I think it's going to be. But yeah, I like the idea, if it does come into something, of having that game, going to Corvallis and playing Oregon State and hosting Boston College. And I know BC's on the schedule already. But it is going to be difficult to get away from some of these games that you already have booked out through 2036 or whatnot. And I think there's going to be a lot of posturing and movement that's going to need to happen at this point. But I caution, once again, Ohio State dropped series against UGA and Tennessee because of this Pac-12 alliance that they had that never came to fruition. And you had to hit the reset button on getting those home and homes with SEC schools. So, I don't know. I guess we'll find out. I mean, reportedly, we're going to hear something around 2:00 today in regards to this. It sounds like it's going to be heavy on pretty words and maybe short on substance, but more to come. But I just don't necessarily put a lot of faith in how this is coming together at this point. And until I see a real plan, I'm going to just really be very dodgy on it.
I posted a video when all this news came out, admittedly playing checkers in a game of chess and saying, hey, if I had a stake in the game and had to study this for weeks and weeks on end, and again, had a stake in the game, maybe my approach would be a little bit more thought out. But in regards to the scheduling, I think that, okay, the SEC was approached by Oklahoma and Texas. So in that way, I don't blame the SEC for making the move, because the way college football is structured, everybody's in it for themselves, meaning everyone, as in every conference, is in it for themselves. There's no governing body to say, this is the way we're going to structure it. This is the AFC East, the AFC North, the AFC South, because this is best for everyone. And we're going to have balance competitively and financially. That's not the way it works. So everybody's in it for themselves. So the SEC, by accepting those two teams, knew that it was destroying the Big 12 as a Power 5 conference, that there was just no way that they would be able to maintain that status. And even putting together the likes of Houston and Memphis and whomever else isn't going to maintain that status. So the SEC fully knows that it destroyed a league by doing it. They would never admit to that. So if this alliance comes through, the only impactful way that I think that they can put this together is to say, yeah, we have a true scheduling alliance, meaning we are shutting out the SEC. They're not going to term it that way. And I'm not saying this is what they're going to do. This is what I suggest. I was thinking they would go to 9 conference games, make the ACC come up to 9, because when you get a 14-team league and you're only playing 8 conference games and leaving 5 off the schedule, it's a bit difficult. But anyway, if you go to 9 conference games, then why have a scheduling alliance if you're not committed to, you got 41 teams involved, then they need to play each other. So you're not playing with the SEC. You're basically saying, you don't state it that way, that we are scheduling non-conference games. By the time we schedule an FCS and a group of 5 on these various team schedules, we're only scheduling each other. Therefore, the SEC will have no attractive non-conference games because we've completely shut them out of the deal. And that's kind of a tit for tat there on my thought there.
Yeah, I don't think that can be done, though, because you got Florida, Florida State, South Carolina, Clemson.
You do. And
Georgia Tech, Georgia. I mean, you got so many rivalries that are built in. Your state legislature will have a say about that, but, you know.
And we've had Texas A&M in the past, and we're having Oklahoma State. So what we've at times thought were just traditions that could not be broken in any such way have been. So I understand what you're saying, and I thought of that, and certainly maybe the red tape is too thick.
I would also add that the SEC doesn't need non-conference games to be propped up. That's what ESPN is for.
They get all their credibility from Reese Davis and
beating each other. An SEC loss,
the boys.
A loss to an SEC team is as good as a win, and so the SEC is going to go undefeated every single week by those marks.
They will in the non-conference schedule, the way I've got it arranged, because they're going to have nobody to play but a bunch of Sunbelt teams.
Well, maybe they will save the Big 12 after destroying the Big 12. Maybe that's who they use them and the AAC, and they just use them to feed themselves. They just feed on the conference that they destroyed. Like you shoot a deer and you put it in the freezer and you just today I'll have a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and Use the entire Big 12. You don't want to just use part of it. Use the entire Big 12.